Hey, AP Psych. It is Thursday, April 2nd. This is the afternoon live stream for AP Psych as we continue to cover Chapter 15, Personality. Honestly, during the morning's live stream, I completely was unaware of what day it was of the week. So, yeah, COVID-19 effect. Also, just through communication with students, there are some students in our AP Psych sections who have relatives who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. So, just make sure you keep families and thoughts and prayers and everyone, and make sure we stay safe and healthy during this time. If you want to go ahead and get out your Chapter 15 lab, we're going to be taking personality test number 4. I switched up the order on Canvas. Since we're starting Humanistic Theory today, or covering it today, I wanted to give you a Humanistic personality test. So I think I'm going to circle back around on Monday and give you the TAT test, the Thematic Apperception test, and the Inkblot test. Very fun, but again, the TAT I'm definitely going to give you because it's amazing how accurate that one can be as well. So we'll do that on Monday. Remember, no live streams on Friday. Fridays are just work days for you, not only for my class, but for any other class that you need to do. I don't want you worrying about anything else on Friday. Do remember that tomorrow is your deadline for your job and the quiz, the partner quiz, okay? So, and if you get in a bind there and if you need additional time on any of the Chapter 4 assignments, I think that would be okay if I got them later in the weekend. But journal critique needs to be in by tomorrow. So if you have to prioritize anything, obviously do it always by what's worth the most points, which is the journal critique, okay? All right, so if you have your journal, your Chapter 15 lab out, this is number 4, and just title it Humanistic Rating Scale. So most of the time, if you take a humanistic test, they're having you list traits and they're having you rate them or, value them. Megan, is everything tomorrow right? Or tonight at midnight? Anytime tomorrow, Megan, is fine. So, you can give them to me through midnight tomorrow is fine for the journal critique. And then on the other Chapter 4 assignments, I won't be as picky for those, just as our first chapter we're finishing up. So critique can be anytime tomorrow, all the way up through midnight, and then any of the other Chapter 4 stuff can be at that time as well. Okay, good question. All right, for the humanistic rating test, you need to have number 1 to 5 twice on your paper, and it's kind of better if they're across from each other. And this one is timed, which is what humanistic tests generally do. They are timed, as they're having you rate aspects of your personality and identify aspects of your personality. So I'm gonna get my timer here. Okay, all right. On the first list of 5, so number 1 to 5, and at the top of that one, put strengths. And then on the second list of 5, put weaknesses. Okay, all right, and so you're gonna have a minute and a half. I think I'm supposed to give you 2 minutes, but that seemed like forever. So a minute and a half, and you are going to list down, and you can use, a word can be in both columns if it needs to be, because that definitely is applicable. I get that question. All right, so go. Okay, and stop. okay? And then below that or next to that, or if you want to, you're going to make 2 more columns, okay? This one you don't have to number, but in the first column, go ahead and label it my personality. And then on the second column, label it future personality. And if you want to put a line between those, you can. It doesn't really matter as long as you're separate. Now we want you to work on both these lists at the same time. You can go back and forth, but don't just together because you only have like a minute to do this one, okay? So on the first list, what you're gonna do is you're gonna list all the personality traits that you would ascribe to yourself right now that just very quickly come to your mind. And then on the second one, you're gonna list all the personality traits that you hope to have in the future when your personality is done developing, okay? So kind of what is my personality now and what would I like it to be in the future, okay? And we don't want you to stop based on a number. We just want you to keep going for a minute, okay? All right, ready? And go. And again, you can have the same trait in both lists on this one as well, okay? So go, you have 1 minute. $30 left. Okay, and stop. Okay. All right, so, and we're gonna, when we talk about humanistic, we're actually gonna, so leave that out if you want to, but when we talk about humanistic, we're gonna kind of refer back to the two. So the first list, the strengths and the weaknesses refer to your self-concept, okay? So that's actually what we're trying to see in the test is, do you have a mature developed idea of yourself, okay? Excuse me, that's self-efficacy. Sorry, strengths and weaknesses. The first one is self-efficacy. So my strengths and my weaknesses. So do I have a developed sense of what am I good at, what am I not at, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? Again, the idea is in self-efficacy is to understand that we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, and I have to learn to know them and to accept them, okay? That doesn't mean just, accept my weaknesses, but understand that I am human and that I am going to have good and bad, okay? I'm going to have id, superego, okay? So this is heavily important in the concept of self-actualization. List 2 then is an idea about your self-concept, okay? So not only should the first list probably be the longest, hopefully, and that's an indication of your personality now, but then also the idea that what your personality or your self-concept wants to become on your road to self-actualization, okay? Now, humanists will say that if there's a big gap between those two lists, in other words, list 2 is longer or just as long as list 1, then, you kind of, you're different. Your self-concept might not be developing in the way that you want because you basically got a lot of traits that are not what you want to eventually have in the future. So, so what they've done in most humanistic personality tests is they're going to rate you on, do you know yourself? And then how well do you know yourself? And then do you know your strengths and weaknesses? And do you accept that? Do you accept who you are? Okay. So, also then if there's a big gap between that second list and that first list, what am I now and what I hope to be, then obviously there's also that indicates more work that probably needs to be done for you to get to self-actualization, journey up to who you want to be, okay? So most of the time when you take a humanistic test, and I have another one that's kind of a humanistic trait test, you're gonna be rating aspects of your personality, you're gonna be listing them, you're gonna be ranking them, because again, they wanna really know who you are, and do you know who you are? And then do you accept that person? is kind of what it is. So within just listing, it's amazing how many different analysis you can get from that. Humanistic is very big in personality. It's probably the second largest section in your psych book. It's a very prescribed to theory as well. It's very simple, but it's all surrounding around self-concept plus self-efficacy equals self-actualization and self-growth. So we have talked about this. We've talked about this formula. It's kind of the humanistic formula, if you will, before. So that's what a humanistic test is going to do. You know, it doesn't want to just measure your personality traits overall. What it wants to do is see, you know, do your traits now match who you want to become? And do you understand that you have good traits and bad traits, as we all do? Again, everybody. Now, it's interesting on the first list every year, generally the classes are split about half and half. Some students have more on the strength side, and some students have more on the weakness side, which is also kind of fascinating for humanistic theory because it's which aspect of your personality do you focus on? Are you more in touch with? You need to be in touch with both sides, not just one. Obviously, it's not healthy just to be focused on your weaknesses, but it's also not healthy just to be focused on your strengths. Okay, you need to know both sides, and you also need to accept both sides. Okay, so that's kind of how it meshes together. So I think my other one, you have to put them in order based on, like I give you a list of traits and you have to put them in order based on how they apply to you. So it's kind of so we'll do that up here when we do that one, but it's kind of a fun test as well. But they'll go with self-concept, self-efficacy, self-actualization, self-growth, and kind of do you know who you are and do you accept that person, okay? A little bit shorter day today. So again, the idea there is that if I develop a self-concept, healthy self-concept, healthy sense of self-efficacy, I will be more likely to reach self-actualization, which is all that I can be, fulfilling my unique potential, okay? Now, one thing I want to dispel really quickly to people who just look at the personality theory from kind of a surface viewer without a psychological background and knowledge, they're going to say, well, humanistic just promotes good traits because that's what we need to become self-actualized. So that theory is just going to basically account for all the good traits that I have. Okay, so now again, it's important to realize that that's not accurate. It's what traits in my personality are actualized. Okay, humanists definitely agree that we have pros and cons, strengths, weaknesses, good, bad. Okay, but for me to become self-actualized, I just need to actualize the right traits that will help me achieve self-actualization in whatever that unique way is for me. So I might need to actualize a bad trait. You know, like it could be impatience. You know, if I'm going to be a first responder, an EMT, rescue team, you know, those people need to not wait around. They need to not be indecisive. They need to be more action oriented. So, you know, there's kind of an example of how you could actualize a negative trait to actually help you attain self-actualization and stuff. Who am I? Who am I now, and who do I want to be in the future? Well, who I am now, some of those traits I don't want to have in the future. And then here, self-efficacy is all about knowing my strengths and my weaknesses and actualizing my strengths. So again, it goes back to that example I gave you. You know, you become self-actualized when you actualize the traits that you need to help you get there. So if I am terrible at bowling, you know, it's not good for me to bowl in the league and bowl every night. You know, that's going to eventually lead to some frustration. Now I can go out every once in a while and have some fun with it and not care about it. But I need to not put myself in a situation where it's, you know, it's very competitive. It's very serious. You know, there's a lot riding on it because I'm just going to end up failing over and over, which is not good for me. But the idea is that you know what those are and that you actualize the traits, whatever they are, probably a combination that helps you achieve self-actualization. So my journey to self-actualization is where I start developing and actualizing my personality as well. So I get a self-concept, I get self-efficacy, and then I have like my personality profile, okay? Now again, remember that humanists are gonna say that as a result, my personality never really fully develops. It's always developing, it's always changing. So even when I get to self-actualization, remember the goal is to hold it and to keep it. So, you know, I'm gonna have to continually actualize those traits that got me there and keep those other ones that never really stops growing. Again, you know, if I asked you, do you have a different personality today than you did at elementary school? You're all gonna say yes. Do you have the same personality as you did? Is your personality today different than it was in middle school? Yes. Is your personality today gonna be different than you are when you graduate from college? Again, nature, nurture, but humanists, again, believe that our drive for self-actualization is innate. It's biological. right? We have a self-actualizing tendency, I think they call it. I think that's what Maslow referred to it as, which means that it's a drive. Again, they're Maslow's hierarchy of needs, not wants. So there's the nature side of it. But the nurture side of the theory is that they never really feel that your personality stops developing, because this process for self-actualization never really ceases. So it's a lifelong journey, if you will, to kind of finalize your personality. Okay. Then, okay, so Rogers is technically, I believe, the father of humanistic psychology. Maslow has his hierarchy of needs. He's probably more well known. Okay, and then this concept of peak experiences, which your book does mention on page 610, I think, briefly, and it's a very important concept. Okay, so because we're actually in one right now, but peak experiences, humanistic psychologists say, are where we really get changes in our personality, and when we really kind of get a big shove towards self-actualization. And peak experiences are any experience in life that just transcends understanding, that it really makes you stop and think about who you are, where you're going, who you're becoming. If it's a period that teaches you a massive lesson, these obviously can be good or bad. So they can be trials, challenges. They can be, any significant time in life in which you really learn something about yourself, and it really kind of promotes change in who you are. So seniors, graduation from high school, humanists say, is a peak experience. You've accumulated 12 years of public education. It's a huge mile mark, and it's going to teach you a lot as you reflect back on it, I'm sure. And you probably have changed a lot through the 12 years. So they believe that some peak experiences were the same for everybody. So like everybody hopefully will graduate from high school. When you graduate from college, that's a peak experience. When you get married, that's a peak experience. If you've lost a loved one, that's a peak experience. If your parents have divorced, there's a peak experience. So there's natural ones that are in there, but then there are also individual peak experiences that happen. Like if I had a sports injury, or I had a really rough breakup, or my friend group changed on me, in the middle of school or whatever. Those would be more individual peak experiences that definitely teach me a lot about myself and who I am and what I want to become, and teaches me a lot about my personality. And at those points, at those peak experiences, those are going to be where we have huge shifts in our personality, most likely. Okay. All right. So don't forget about peak experiences, because they help promote and us journey through these positively. Okay. All right, so that's humanistic theory there. So real simple. I mean, if you had to summarize it in one sentence, is our personality comes from our journey towards self-actualization and self-growth, and that I tend to actualize the traits that will help me get there, and not actualize the traits that kind of hinder my progress. But understanding, this is a fragmented sentence now, is that I'm going to have negative parts to my personality. Okay, we all do. Everybody does. There's no such thing as a perfect personality. So, okay. All right. Oh, sorry. Yes, very healthy. Good question. So, Megan asked a very good, insightful question. Is it healthy if I keep an ongoing list of my strengths and weaknesses? And yes, that is huge. And that's actually strengths and weaknesses, and then also who you want to become. And so that you're constantly looking at those lists and that you're aware of them, okay, of who you are. And you're also aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and that you become to accept that person. And then that'll help you, again, promote you towards self-actualization. So yeah, very good. Okay. All right. And then I've got them numbered over here by theories. So we have covered, number 1 would be psychoanalytic, psychodynamic. 2 is humanistic. And then 3 is behavioristic. And behavioristic actually comes later with when we talk about social learning theory, which is behavioral cognitive. So, but it's there. But again, it's very, very simple. So our big behaviorists are Skinner and Watson. Okay. So father of behaviorism, classical conditioning. Most influential psychologist of all time, operant conditioning with Skinner, okay? But again, this is the whole nurture side of personality, and that is our personality comes from the environment. So a true behavioristic view would be that's the only place you get your personality. Again, a more modern view is that, obviously the environment does condition, teach me, promote personality traits and parts of my personality. So again, we've talked briefly that culture is huge in personality. You know, our culture, our Liberty North culture, our American adolescent culture, Missouri culture promotes personality traits. And if you align to those because you're reinforced, okay, or you're associated with something good, or if you do because if you don't do it, you're punished or associated with something bad. Obviously, you can see that there. So behavior is going to say that basically the environment conditions us to have and develop certain personality traits. And nobody's going to, before we had even started the chapter, if I were to tell you, just list off places where your personality comes from, most of you are going to include the environment there and culture. So, that's what act differently in different environments, whether it be work, school, has influenced my personality. But again, going back to here, obviously that's a part of self-actualization, but the idea that, I want to be able to find out who I truly am and not the traits that keep changing depending on the environment, the traits that stay, okay? So behaviorism is very simply the environment. My environment, I get personality traits, I develop them from my interactions in the environment through conditioning, and that is the total nurture side right there. And then when we get to trait theory, that'll be the total biological nature side. Okay, this one is kind of both, and psychodynamic and analytic are both. Again, Freud did believe that some of those id things were biological. Some of the id, ego, and superego are biological, and then some of them are from traumatic experiences, conflicts, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right, we are done today. All right, so any other questions before we go? Again, remember, no live streams on Friday, so Fridays are just work days, so I'll see everybody on Monday. So have a very good weekend. And we have 2 more theories, personality theories to go, but we have several more personality tests to go. So again, I'll keep updating and changing the order in the lab based on what we do, but plan on Monday will be the TAT, thematic apperception. I already know the picture I want to show you, and then ink blot test, okay? Yes, Lauren, good question. The learning targets and the essential questions for chapter 15 are posted on Canvas. Remember that they are a part of 12, 13, 14, and 15 are all together. So it should be when you click on one. No, actually chapter 4 is on the bottom. It's right before that would be chapter 15. There's only 5 of them. So I think I've had several students that just miss it because there's only 5 questions there. So again, this is the doc. This is what it looks like on Canvas. So, so if you notice, it's got 12, 13, 14, and then 15 down here at the bottom, but there's only 5 of them. But it's listed just like this. I think it's called, the unit is called motivation, emotion, stress, and personality. And I think I put in there chapters 12, 13, 14, and 15. So that's where it is. Okay, so number 1, because it says, describe and compare research methods that psychologists use to investigate personality. So, and that will definitely come in on Monday because ink blot tests, the TAT, MMPI are some of your more reliable and valid measures of personality that we give in the professional community if we really need to professionally get a personality inventory on you. Okay, so good question. Any other questions? Yeah, try cream soda, Dr. Pepper, Lauren. Good. Okay. All right. Again, if you need to contact me, email me. However you want to do it. Just let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm here, so I'll still be in the office tomorrow or my basement, but I'll be on my computer grading and then just returning questions, answering questions and stuff, communicating with students from 8:30 to around 3 o'clock. So if you need anything, touch base with me. I miss you guys. Definitely miss just interacting with you in the classroom, the insightful dialogue and stuff that we have. I miss it. So if you guys need anything, let me know. Have a good weekend. And again, I'll see you on Monday.